and welcome back to Pointlessly Relevant. Today we're talking about upcoming metal releases. Cue awesome music! So far, this has been a pretty good year for metal, though we haven't had a lot of outstanding releases. That being said, there is one that has definitely got Album of the Year opportunity, which I'll talk about towards the end of the video. But if you look at all the upcoming stuff, it is looking to be an extremely exciting year with many of my favorite metal bands releasing albums in the next couple of months. I'm so excited. Let's get started. Starting off, today marked the release of the next album from A Perfect Circle. It's called Eat the Elephant. I've listened to a little bit of it, and it is sounding really good. All the reviews are very high. I'm very excited to sit down and check this thing out. Next on our list, on 4/27, Godsmack is going to release their latest album, When Legends Rise. I always love listening to their stuff. It's very empowering, and with a title like this, I'm sure it is going to be a big hit. Next up, on 5/18, that's May 18th, Five Finger Death Punch finally returns with the new album And Justice for None. I've listened to a couple of the singles. I listened to Champagne today, their latest sequel. It's very intense. It's very thought-provoking. I'm really looking forward to hearing this entire album. And plus, the fact this title is very ominous, And Justice for None. It calls back to one of the greatest metal albums of all time, in my opinion, And Justice for All from Metallica. So for them to use such a title, I'm very interested to see just how intense this album is going to be. Coming up on June 1st is one of my all-time favorite metal bands, and that would be Ghost. They're returning with an album called Prequel. They've already released a single. It's called Rats. I've listened to it. It's great again. I'm really excited about this album, and I'm looking forward to listening to it. Coming up on June 8th is Zealand Ardor's next album, Strange Fruit. I really felt that they should have won Album of the Year last year, and I have listened to their latest single, Gravedigger's Chant. It's really powerful. It's very eerie. It continues their great sound that they developed last year. I'm really, really excited to see if they can continue their excellence with this new album. Finally, on July the 13th, we have Deathhaven coming back with Ordinary Corrupt Human Love. Their last two albums were really, really good. I thoroughly enjoy it. They have their own sound, but that is a sound that I really like. It is true that sometimes you can't differentiate it from album to album, but it continues to sound great. I listened to their new single today. It still sounded great. Again, another great release that I'm really looking forward to from one of my favorite metal bands. I've listened to several of the singles from these upcoming releases that they've already released. I'd like to go ahead and give you my thoughts on them. From Deathhaven, however you want to say it, comes their single, Honeycomb. It's interestingly enough, it's 11 minutes long. It continues. The music is great. All right, it gives you that eerie yet rise above it all vibe that comes from the music, and the shrouding singing, the shrouding vocals that, quite honestly, you have to listen to it several times to make out what they're saying, but still, it adds to that feeling. Deathhaven is one of those metal bands that doesn't, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter what they say, but what they say is not as important of how it makes you feel. And this is a very empowering band. It's like you're rising above something. It's like you're down in something terrible, but you rise above it. And their latest single continues that. Now, Ghost, however, is so interesting. You see them come out on stage, and they've got these scary makeup, and they've got these scary costumes. I think that, like, all of the band members, like they're called the Ghouls or something like that, and you're expecting this hard, maybe not even be able to understand. Then they start singing. And quite frankly, most of their melodies are beautiful. They got some interesting messages. Some of their stuff I don't agree with, but when they're on, they're better than anyone. Okay, their riffs are great, their presence is great, the vocals are great, so many of their songs really are very enlightening. They make you think, and they really carry you. They're very passionate as well, and anybody who knows me knows that I don't have to agree with you politically or really in any way to appreciate your art, especially when you have passion behind what you're saying. Might not agree with you, but I do appreciate the fact that you are passionate. And that is definitely one of the things that I have about Ghost. All right, Gravedigger's Chant from Zeal and Ardor. They've got a new album coming out later this year that we've already talked about, but they've already got the music video up. This song is awesome, okay? It, again, has this chanting feeling. I'll probably do a whole video based on what I feel about Zeal and Ardor, but when they do their thing, I've never heard the sound before. Listen, it's black metal, okay? They're dealing with some very dark subject matters, but it invokes almost these spirituals, these rhythmic spirituals that you could almost visually see down in the slave era of Louisiana. People working in the fields, ready to rise up against their oppressors. It invokes those type of feelings from you, and I think that is what they are trying to get. Again, another band that I don't always agree with what they say, but man, I appreciate the way they say it, and you can't get past this surreal sound that they produce. It is fabulous stuff. Also, we've had albums from Ishan and some other things, but there is one more album I would like to talk about for just a brief moment, okay? I don't know this group. This group is called Altars of Grief. Yes, that is a great title for a metal band. And their album they just put out is Iris. And I want to say right now, it is front runner for Best Metal Album of the Year. I know we've got a long way to go, and some great bands are about to release new material. I get that. But so far, these guys have really jumped into the scene. Their music is great. It's orchestral, it's light, but it has kind of this doom, but you can rise above the doom type of vibe. Their first two tracks just really hit it out of the park, and the rest of the album carries the excellence. But Isolation and Desolation, that is the first two tracks. Like, it's just powerful. It's awesome stuff. It's two of the best opening tracks I've ever heard on a metal album. So by all means, if you want a really good, I don't know what classification you would give them. They're definitely not anthem metal, but it is kind of doom and gloom metal, but there's also kind of this light at the end of the tunnel vibe that they give off as well. So maybe existential metal, you might want to say. I don't know. There's so many different broad terms for the different forms of metal. But still, I think that this is the front runner so far for Metal Album of the Year. And let us not forget that allegedly, Tool is going to release their next album this year. It's been over a decade, right? If you look on any greatest metal bands lists, or a list that says greatest metal albums, you don't get a lot that have been created in the last 20 years. You just don't. Now, I feel like that's a little unfair, because maybe you're putting too much credence on people just because they did it first, but I get the epicness of that scope because they set the trend. I get it. Point being, on those lists, Tool is always there. They're one of the great bands of this new century. One of the great bands of all time. So you can't get their music on iTunes, unfortunately, because they had a big falling out with iTunes. Who knows? Maybe that will change with their next release, but I will be buying the vinyl, so I don't care. But let's not forget, at some point, Tool is supposed to release their big album this year. Well, thank you so very much for listening. Be sure you stay pointlessly relevant and cue awesome music!